Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Tomorrow marks 1 week since 5-year-old Frank Young went missing at Red Earth Cree Nation in northeastern Saskatchewan, and there's still no sign of the little boy. He was last seen playing outside at lunchtime last Tuesday. Since then, everything from planes equipped with high-resolution infrared cameras to drones and dogs have been used to try to find the little boy. Volunteer search and rescue teams from around the province answered the call to assist the RCMP. Searching continued over the weekend, and Red Earth has opened up the search to volunteers outside of the community. We expect to have more details on this search tomorrow. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls advocate Bridget Tolley finally received a long overdue apology. Her mother Gladys was struck and killed by police more than 2 decades ago. Provincial police and officials traveled to meet her on the Kitigan-Zibi First Nation in western Quebec. But as APTN's Fraser Needham reports, it's going to take a lot more than that before she trusts the police again.
It was on this stretch of highway back in October 2001 that 61-year-old Gladys Tolley was struck and killed by a Sûreté de Quebec police cruiser. A few months later, Montreal police investigated and concluded the collision was an accident, case closed. But it was far from over for her daughter, Bridget.
And after I got the police report, oh my God, that made it worse. That only made it, my curiosity. It took me like about 1.5 years to do the case, to look at all the papers and everything. And that's when I started and I asked for a public inquiry because it was all messed up.
The Tolley family says important details were missed by investigators and called for the case to be reopened and for a public inquiry. Both have been refused by the province. But government and Montreal police officials did issue a private apology on Friday, and Tolley says it's meaningful that Quebec Minister of Indigenous Affairs, Ian Lafreniere, took the initiative to do this.
It's a really huge step, because I don't know, I went through so many ministers and MPs and everybody, I went through them. I met so many, and this is the first one.
For his part, Lafreniere admits mistakes were made in the investigation.
There've been some communication breach, there've been some lack of information, and we said that we were sorry for that, and that was extremely important for the family.
He also outlined the government's reasons for not doing the apology publicly.
This is not a communication issue, this is not a PR issue, this is really respect of the family. So I totally respect the family, and that's the reason why we've been doing the event the way they were intending to, not the way we were supposed to.
Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabe Chief Dylan Whiteduck agrees the apology is an important first step, but says there is still much more work to be done in terms of First Nations relations with police.
We have to remember that there's a lot of other injustice incidents that took place across Canada, across Quebec, in particular First Nations, and we can't forget about those ones. We need to continue working for the other files that need to be resolved.
And Tolley says her faith in police will remain broken for the time being.
Well, we need accountability, and we've been asking for that for years. Accountability, acknowledgement, still helping the families with the unsolved cases and stuff like this. It's still hard, and even though we had a public inquiry, events commission, there's nothing going on right now, and it's still happening, and it's happening more than ever still today.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Too white, too male-dominated, and not doing enough to prevent extremists. Those are 3 takeaways from a new report out today that's shining a harsh light on the Canadian military. The report also takes the military to task for not doing enough to address racism and systemic discrimination over the past 20 years. The force is still more than 86% white. The report says the military is not doing enough to stop white supremacists and other radicals from joining its ranks. This comes after a year-long review by a panel of retired members of the force. Canada's Defence Minister Anita Anand had this to say.
As Minister of National Defence and a racialized woman, I am strongly committed to building institutions where Canadians from all backgrounds are included, welcomed, and empowered. I will continue to work on this mission with General Eyre and Deputy Minister Matthews every single day.
To Thunder Bay now, where a majority of the city's embattled police services board have resigned. The move comes just days after the Ontario Police Watchdog appointed an administrator to oversee the board. It also comes as high-ranking officials with the city's police service are currently under investigation. With more, we're joined by the now former chair of the Police Services Board, Kristen Oliver. Ms. Oliver, thank you so much for being with us. You and 2 other members of the Thunder Bay Police Services Board have resigned. What was behind the decision to leave the board?
So last Tuesday during our actual Police Service Board meeting, we were notified by the tribunal through the Ontario Civilian Police Commission that they were appointing a board administrator who would ultimately have full control of the board, essentially would be the sole vote member. And they said that it was based on a preliminary investigation that determined that this board was in crisis, that we were dysfunctional, and so for those reasons, I had to really take a look at and examine my role and how I saw myself participating on this board.
When the Civilian Police Commission appointed an administrator to oversee the board, they did make a reference to an emergency existing within the board, and that recommendations from Justice Murray Sinclair's report remain unfulfilled. Was this a board in crisis before you stepped aside?
I don't see us actually. I did not see this board as being in crisis. We had 4 members in particular who were very engaged, worked very diligently on the recommendations, certainly from Senator Sinclair's report, but also recognizing that we were working with the confines of number of rights holders and stakeholders, and having those consultation discussions. Certainly it helped develop our strategic plan, which was a huge undertaking that we did last year. When we look at the work that we were able to complete as a board, I did not see us in emergency crisis by any stretch of the imagination. And I also think it's important to recognize that this board in particular also did have a board administrator assigned to us when we first became the board in 2018. He was in that role for 18 months, and he was allowed to go essentially because the work on the Sinclair recommendations were underway. So at that time, a little over 18 months ago, CPC was confident that this board was doing the work that we needed to do, and so they relieved the administrator at that time, and then subsequently are using that as an excuse to appoint another administrator. At no time did OCPC even ask for any of our minutes, agendas. We have a chart that we keep to update the ongoing status of where these recommendations are, and at no time were any of that information requested.
There's a number of human rights complaints have been filed. There's some people in the Thunder Bay area have said they want the Thunder Bay Police Service dismantled. What's your response to that?
So I certainly don't see the value in dismantling Thunder Bay Police Service. I don't essentially see what that would accomplish. I mean, this board, when we were together, we were certainly working on the systemic racism that was identified. We're coming up with some policies and regulations around how to best eradicate the systemic racism that we're seeing at this institutional level. When, just calling for disbandment of the police service, I think is unfair. There are, I would say, 98% of the membership between civilian and uniformed officers are incredibly dedicated to this community. They see value in the work that they do every single day. They see value in the work that we were trying to accomplish in terms of, changing the culture of policing in Thunder Bay. And a lot of them were on board. And I think that, these recommendations to dismantle actually infringes the work that they're doing. And I think that it's unfair. I think that when you look at whether you bring in another police service, what changes? Essentially the uniform, if we're not changing the institutional situation and issues.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for taking the time to update us here.
Thank you. Have a good night.
To Watson Lake, Yukon now, where some Liard First Nation band members say they are being left in the dark on important issues. The community has been under new leadership for almost 2 years, and their chief says that they are on track for success. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
And I knew I was going to survive to tell my story of my experience in North Post.
Mary Caesar is a Cascadena elder, artist, and residential school survivor. Caesar uses painting to heal, and she wants her people to heal too. She says her community of Watson Lake, Yukon, is grappling with many health and social issues like addiction, high rates of cancer and illness, and violence.
People are constantly grieving here, and it's like, it just seems like a hopeless situation because nobody's talking about it. Our leaders are not addressing what's happening here in the communities.
And she's not alone. For the last several years, controversy has riddled Liard First Nation, which has 1,400 members. In 2014, the band was put into third-party management for falling into debt. The next year, the federal government sued the First Nation for failing to report the salary of its leaders. Now, members like Caesar say they're still in the dark with where the community's at. For example, there hasn't been a General Assembly since new leadership was elected in 2020.
We as band members have a right to know what's happening. We have a right to be informed.
Chief Stephen Charlie says there hasn't been a GA because of COVID concerns and hopes to have one as early as this spring. He's confident the First Nation now has a functioning administration, like recently filling a much-needed executive director position.
We just got a new executive director. I had a first discussion with him yesterday, and the first thing he mentioned to me, we need to hire someone for communication. Because we're doing lots of good work, we need to get that information out.
Caesar says she wants to see elders consulted with matters, like how the First Nation is planning to enter self-government.
The direction should be coming from the elders. And Chief and Council also has to listen to the elders and the people.
Charlie agrees. He says he'll continue to work on health and social issues with a focus on healing past divides.
Division has been fostered for power and control. And I think that power and control should be with the people.
For Caesar, it's about Chief and Council taking action in a good way.
I think it's time, time for our people to work together and unite and help each other.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Watson Lake.
We need to take a quick break, but still ahead, Mohawk children used in a mind control experiment by the CIA in the 50s. I'll tell you about that when we come back after the break. group of Mohawk women from Kahnawake near Montreal allege that Indigenous children were victims of CIA mind control experiments in the 50s and 60s. A warning to our viewers, the story contains sensitive subject matter about residential schools, psychological torture, and unmarked graves. Amelia Fournier has this.
These historic buildings in Montreal hold a rich history and dark secrets. From 1957 to 1964, the Allen Memorial Institute was the site of Dr. Ewan Cameron's mind control experiments, which were part of the CIA's MK Ultra program.
In our cases, all the former patients and families of Dr. Cameron were used as guinea pigs. He experimented upon them, and that was funded by the Canadian government.
Cameron injected his subjects with high doses of LSD and barbiturates with the goal of deprogramming them.
We're getting pretty good, getting better at getting the information from all of those archives, but now we have to organize it.
Now the Mohawk Mothers, a group of Mohawk women from Kahnawake who see themselves as guardians of Mohawk land, fear the expansion of Montreal's Royal Victoria Hospital will destroy evidence of these crimes. Their allegations include that the residential school system and social services provided Indigenous children for Cameron's experiments, and that victims' bodies were possibly buried on site. McGill did not confirm if there will be an investigation on the grounds, but said they were engaged to collaborate with Indigenous communities.
We need to have them be held accountable to stop this construction project from happening, the new Vic project, because we need to see out on this unceded territory that is Kahnawake territory. It needs to be looked into.
The Mohawk Mothers call themselves the traditional representatives of Kahnawake.
So really, it's in our DNA to take care of this and to take care of the future DNA that's coming.
They submitted a claim to the Superior Court of Quebec against McGill University and other public bodies, which will be heard on May 30th. While they've worked with academics and community members to assemble their evidence, some of the Mohawk Mothers' allegations lack concrete proof, according to lawyer Alan Stein. He has represented victims of Dr. Cameron and their families since the 1960s.
I inherited these files from my father when I joined the firm after 1963.
Stein is currently representing the victims' families in a court case underway against the federal government and McGill, among others.
Your Indigenous patients at the Allen Memorial.
Yes, and some of our families are Indigenous, are Native families whom we're representing.
He could not confirm that Indigenous orphans were part of the experiments, nor if there had been clandestine burials on the grounds.
I might not be representing their families, but we have information that some of the Indigenous or Native patients of Dr. Cameron were minors under the age of 21. We've even been told that some of them were orphans, but I'm not so sure about that. Whether or not they were buried on the grounds of the Allen Memorial Hospital or the Royal Victoria Hospital, we have no proof of.
The Mohawk Council of Kahnawake is not involved in the Mohawk Mothers court case and didn't provide a comment. Amelia Fournier, APTN National News, Montreal.
To Manitoba now, Indigenous Minister Patty Hajdu was in Winnipeg late last week to announce money for an Indigenous wellness program in the Manitoba capital. $1.8 million will be going towards the creation of the Kahnawake Cultural and Wellness Center. It'll provide life skills training, a cultural-based daycare center, food and housing security initiatives, and violence prevention and intervention programs. The expansion project will double the number of people who can access these supports.
Expansion will allow them to serve double the number of people they serve. It will obviously create jobs as well, but support people to get through difficult times or to get the services they need. They work with Indigenous young people, with two-spirited people, with individuals that need supports in the community to navigate services and to get the kinds of things they need to move forward in a good way.
Still in Manitoba, the creation of the new Anti-Racism in Sports Accord. Immigration Partnership Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and the Gold Eyes baseball team spearheaded this project. The accord sets out commitments for sports organizations to be anti-racist, including enforcement of a zero-tolerance policy for racism, yearly education and training, as well as collecting race-based data. So far, 30 sports organizations have signed on, and the project is looking for more.
These are commitments that will help assess, acknowledge, and intentionally address racism within sport organizations. They are basic actions that require goals to guide organizations to becoming anti-racist organizations. Seeking to continue to grow is a value that should be embedded into organizations while working towards their anti-racism goals. This will contribute to ensuring that Winnipeg sport is a safe place for all.
We need to take one more quick break, but when we come back, I will tell you all about a pottery slam. Stay with us.
I usually like to use my work to push some kind of social improvement of some sort.
Welcome back. Let's check out tomorrow's weather forecast. To the east coast, we got cloud and 4 in St. John, sunshine and 8 for Fredericton. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, cloud and 7, -7 and snow for Coujabak. Sept-Îles, sunshine and 2 degrees, same with Saguenay. Montreal, sunny and 6. Ottawa, cloud with chance of showers, 8 degrees. Sault Ste. Marie, you're probably raining and 7 degrees. Snow forecasted for Kapuskasing and Timmins, 6 degrees there. Sunshine for northern Manitoba, Puckatawagan and Thompson, both 4 degrees, 3 and sunny for the Pas. Same with you in Winnipeg, cloud for Brandon, chance of showers, 2 degrees. 16 and sunny for Swift Current, 6 and sunshine for Yorkton. Sun continues for most of the north, 7 for Buffalo Narrows and Uranium City. Sunshine and 14 for Peace River, 11 and showers for Fort McMurray. Showers for Edmonton, 7 degrees, mix of sun and cloud and 17 for Lethbridge. 14 showers for Penticton, 10 and rain for Vancouver and Victoria. 9 and sunny for Prince Rupert, 10 and showers for Prince George. 10 and sunny for Dawson City, Whitehorse, showers and 8 degrees. Wauhee, 6 and sunny, Wrigley, 8 and sunshine. -2 and a mixed sun and cloud for Fort McPherson. Inuvik -1 and mostly sunny. -8 for Baker Lake, sunny there. Newyacht -18 and snow. Igloolik -6 and sunny. Kenite -10 with a mix of sun and cloud. Powerful young Indigenous voice who's been making waves on Saskatchewan's poetry scene is about to make his national debut. Austin Ahenakew is getting ready to share his words at the Canadian Individual Poetry Slam in Vancouver after winning a qualifying event in Regina. Leanne Sanders introduces us to him.
Imagine a beast, but not the kind of beast that falls in love with beauty, but the kind of beast that is killing children one by one secretly.
Austin Ahenakew was a shy 15-year-old when he attended his first poetry slam. 5 years later, Ahenakew now has a son, and his poetry has evolved to address issues like colonialism and racism. Ahenakew is a member of the Ahenakew First Nation and has taken back the term "a noble savage" as his stage name.
It comes from a very old slur, I guess, of what they used to call our chiefs and our great warriors and everyone that was of higher status. The highest people in our culture were still savages in their eyes. So I kind of just adopted it as my own.
Ahenakew is part of an artist-run nonprofit in Regina called Creative City Center. Kat Abenstein is the spoken word coordinator and says she can see Ahenakew going far with his words.
He's really developed into just a strong, passionate performer who speaks so eloquently about, important issues in his life and in his community. And he's just become this force to be reckoned with.
Ahenakew says the poetry community was very welcoming, making it very easy to be whoever he wanted to be. His most well-received poem, Reserved for the Beast, is about issues on the reserve.
I hope to make the world more inclusive and accepting and less intolerant to other people, and overlook stereotypes and all those types of things. I usually like to use my work to push some kind of social improvement of some sort.
Imagine if he killed all your children, raped and murdered your women, pushed everyone to alcohol and drug addiction, or 50% of homes have people being beaten.
The Canadian Individual Poetry Slam takes place in Vancouver this week, with the finals on Friday night.
Drugs.
Leanne Sanders,
rape,
APTN National News,
kidnapping.
Saskatoon.
Good luck to him. We hope you win. Well, we're all out of time for your news to kick off the week. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow.